everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube. Welcome back if you've been following me on the Stargirl front, or just welcome to the DC Stargirl Season 3 review, non-spoiler edition, meaning that if you have yet to watch the third and sadly final season of DC Stargirl, then this is perfect for you. If you're just wondering how does the final season end up, is it worthy of being called a final season? Is it worthy of being a third season? All those questions and more will be answered in this episode. So hopefully you enjoy. However, if you have joined me after doing the entire season 3 episode reviews, you can go check that, which you can also check over on youtube.com/actionx. This might be a little bit of like, we're not really going to progress too much. It's more like just my overall summary of things without trying to be too much in the spoiler territory. Let's just say it like that. But hopefully it's still an entertaining ride and a way to wrap up our Stargirl content for the year. And I say for the year because I'll talk more about like my ideas at the end of this video. But overall speaking, going into it, DC Stargirl Season 3, my opinion, is probably the best season of the show for me in terms of just the overall presentation of it. I feel like it's similar to, what was that, to The Rookie, where every season has benefits, some seasons have disadvantages, but it's the overall presentation, like how does it come together at the end of the day that makes it stand up from the rest. Like, you know, like I can say that for example, season 1 probably had the best visuals. Season 3 might have not so great visual, but some aspects of the story are, in my opinion, better than season 1. I'm talking about Stargirl in this instant, where, yeah, we can have the tomatoes and tomatoes conversation of like, yeah, the visuals are clearly better on the first season, but I still think the third season is better, not because of the visual, but because the other aspect were overall together better than a previous season. It's one of those like minute details that like it becomes a little bit tricky to figure out, because especially as the deeper you go into a show, you start to like have to like really compare to like quality over timing and just how things were, and you have to evaluate the elements. This being just like a 3-season show, for me it has to go 3, 1, 2 so far. So it's like season 3 for me is the better one, because it is like a payoff season. Because originally in the pre-cancellation times, this was only supposed to be the halfway mark of the show. We were supposed to have 6 seasons. There were supposed to be more storylines, more development with these characters. But this kind of felt like kind of a payoff to like, we're at the halfway mark of the story of what the original story was. So we are kind of like closing up some chapters and then, you know, kind of like giving the sparks to new ones. But it's also in the case of life where it's like, there really isn't a true end in any story. There's always like, there could always be more to tell, but they closed the book so well on what they were telling as of that point that your imagination can only speculate to what is next for those characters in the future. And I feel like this is what this season definitely did. Was like, it definitely it closed the book, and it had enough room for imagination to settle in and to figure out like what could have happened on this Earth in the DC world. It's called Earth. So, well, it's definitely Marvel too, but like, you know, I think right now DC just commonly refers to like Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth Prime, you know, all that sort. Now, just for context, I will not be spoiling anything beyond the first episode. So I will talk about things that are introduced in the first episode, but beyond that, like the remaining 12 episodes, we're not going to touch upon them. So don't worry about that. So even if you don't want anything to spoil about the first episode, then maybe this isn't for you. I'm just letting you know, I'm just setting up the premise from that first episode and the trailers and the marketing, and that's about it. And everything else beyond that is just, it's just all just up for your interpretation at the end of the day. So going into it, and then now going into a little bit deeper, the overall story of the season, which I believe for me, the season is all about worthiness, where you kind of have to question, like, these characters have been these, you know, personas for about a good year right now. I want to say it's been about a year since they got these powers or these, you know, abilities or the titles themselves. And they're still trying to figure out, like, is this the right path I'm on? Is this, like, the correct way to be doing things? and am I being what I have to be correctly? And the thing is, like, they're all teenagers, so it's like, it's always that you're still learning as you go. You're making mistakes, and even the things that you believe are true and to be morally correct on what you believe in the moment, it could be radically different down the road. And I feel like this was just this season also was a major step of, like, just the characters growing up and, like, developing further in their mindsets. And it only gets more, like, complicated in a very weird sense when one of their respective legacy members or one of their respective predecessors returns in the form of Sylvester, who played by Joel McHale, who plays Starman. His return definitely does kind of like shake things up, because like we've had, obviously Pat was kind of like a de facto previous member of the JSA. Then, of course, we had Dr. Midnight that reappeared in season 2. But this was the first time they had constant, I forgot what the term, I had the term in my head, but like, constant exposure, like to like someone that they were in their previous generation that is now kind of guiding them in, like, oh, here's what I learned in a previous thing, or everything that I'm passing along to you. It definitely makes them think differently, because, again, the sense of, like, they never, at least up to that point, they never met any of their predecessors. Rick doesn't remember much about his dad being Hourman. Yolanda never met the previous Wildcat. Beth did briefly meet Dr. Midnight, but never really the true Dr. Midnight. They've only had limited interactions and everything. So, and obviously, at that point, Courtney never met Starman. And then, of course, if you want to, like, go extra, like Jade and, with Green Lantern and such, they never had the proper exposure. Now going into this season, like, having there be more interactions of that nature, it definitely questions some things, because, like, you're getting real feedback from someone that you try to, like, look up to, and now it's actually here, like, okay, this is the real deal, as we presume. This season definitely felt more along the lines of, like, a different sort of follow-up to season 1. I feel like this felt more along the lines of, this is kind of what season, like, it's so weird, because, like, I'm talking about, like, oh, season 2 is a bad season. I'm not trying to say that at all. It's like season 2 was like a weird tangent of, like, we're expanding the mythos. Like, it kind of felt like a part 2 or a continuation of season 1. This felt like a successor to season 1, because you had more characters, like, really getting involved in the plot, such as in just the first episode that I'm able to talk about, is you had the Gambler come back, who was completely absent in season 2 in 1. You had Sportsmaster and Tigers returning back to the fold after limitedly being in season 2, but being majorly involved in the first season. And then you had other returning characters, which I won't talk about here, but it definitely felt more along the lines, like, we are picking up the threads from season 1 and we are fully progressing that forward. And among other things, like, it definitely is a season that, story-wise, you are actually there's nothing straightforward. Like, it is, like, I feel like by this point, with superheroes, with superhero storytelling, it becomes not trying to be mean. It becomes a little generic, where it's like, oh, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and then we're going to lead to this climax, and that's it. They set up for the next story arc. I feel like that's just kind of how certain shows and certain movies kind of do it nowadays, but where they play it a little too safe. Honestly, I got a little bit scared, because, like, this season they tried introducing, like, a murder mystery aspect of it, where, like, they're trying to play detective solver and trying to, like, figure out what really happened, because at the end of the first episode, this is the only, like, real big spoiler part, but, like, the gambler dies. Like, he returns for just all of that appearance, thinking that we're going to get a whole storyline with him, but things did not end so well. So his death kind of kickstarted the real story of the season and everything of that sort. And that, for that storyline alone, like, it definitely was not something on the straight and narrow. It felt like they were progressing on a storyline, then it felt like, oh no, there's a completely different storyline. Like, the way they presented the storyline itself was solid. Like, when you really take a step back and you really look at it, it actually does all form very well. It's just, when you were watching it episode to episode, or you were watching it as it was airing, the idea and, like, your way of thinking kind of change it, which is a good thing. It definitely, like, to keep you on your toes, because, like, just seeing, like, okay, they're gonna fight this villain this episode, they're gonna meet up with this adversary, and this episode, like, it could kind of, because it could just blend in together. That's not what the season did. And I was very thankful by that. But by the time we reached like the climax of the season, I was like on the edge of my seat, like, oh crap. I was not expecting that at all. Like I really was. Like there were like audible, I was not expecting that, or I didn't predict that. And then it's one of those like when you eventually realize I'm going to say generally, a twist or a change in the story, when you go back and you start seeing it from a different perspective, you're like, oh, they were giving you clues, but you don't notice it's clues. And I feel like that's the great thing about what mysteries is like. When you kind of discover a new aspect of a mystery, and then you apply that context to the scenes or the things you've already witnessed before, it creates a different layer, it creates a different thing, and that's honestly the cool part. Because for me, obviously, I grew up mostly on mystery shows and, crime solving and everything, so for me, I always love the aspect of, like, going back, or them showing us, like, different perspectives, and it's like, oh, the answer was always there, we just never really looked at it, or we never had a reason to, like, overanalyze the scene, because we don't really think about it. And I feel like that was one of the benefits that this season had over the other, but like it really kept you going. It really kept you like, thinking of everything. Because like again, season 1 was not trying to be formulaic. It definitely had heart. It definitely had a spirit, a different type of spirit. But definitely was, they were the villains they were finding was not really like too groundbreaking. Let's say that. Not to say this season doesn't also do that as well, but it's like it's a different approach and it pays off a little bit differently and it all pays off better. And season 2's villain, I'm like, well, Eclipso was a great looking villain. I completely forgot all about his plan, and even like I'll be a little future spoilers here, but like they briefly mention Eclipso in this season. I'm like, oh right, that's what he did. I forgot all about that. And that's not to say that season was forgettable. I'm not trying to say anything bad about season 2 at all. It's just the more time you step away from something, and you realize like what were the memorable parts of it, it becomes a little difficult to get to it when like you describe. Like for me, I think I remember more of season 1 than season 2, and now I think I'm gonna remember more about season 3 just because of the moments we got and the character development and those moments that we saw. And I feel like this season really like it made everything tighter. Like for it always just depends on the status of things. Where like for me, wrapping up season 1 for the JSA, like the new JSA, it was always questionable for me, thinking like, I mean, I know they're friends. I wouldn't call them a family, and I'm like, I'm a family type of guy, so I'm like, I really wouldn't believe, like, yeah, I got the idea of it, the gist of it, but I wasn't really sold on that. Season 2 didn't really help on that as well, because we didn't really get to spend much nice times with them. And then this season, it's like, okay, I see what you're trying to do here, and it definitely worked out in the end. And I definitely believe, like, yeah, they're all meant to be together. And if I have to mention it by that, but going into the characters now, because like I'm just trying to go into it again. I'm doing the vaguest things I can right now, but still being as the review nature as it would be in terms of the characters. Starting where I lead Courtney Whitmore. She definitely went through a lot this season. Definitely her having her predecessor come back into the world, the land of the living, and like actually her having some sort of mentorship relationship with him was different. It definitely like put her through a loop. Like there are times where like it's everything she wanted, and then there's times where it's not. And one of my good friends and this phrase has been said, but this is what my friend recently said. Like, you never want to meet your heroes, or you never want to meet someone that really inspires you, because it's like the romanticization, and it doesn't have to always be like a romantic interest or anything. But you look at that, it's like, oh, you're not exactly the person I was envisioning. And because you always get this idea of like someone you never met before, because you just look at them or you just hear about them. Like you just have this expectation like, oh, this person is like this, so when I talk to them, they're going to be exactly what it is. And sometimes they're right, but most times they're wrong. And I feel like that was just a big learning curve she had to learn this season, especially like you're having two active star heroes on like, on rotation, where like you have the return of Starman, but you also have Stargirl still developing her journey and her, development, and it creates a bit of a friction, let's say. Yolanda, I was a bit hesitant. I will say that there was a bit of hesitation for me with her this season, because it kind of felt like, for me, like I had like, when I got to season 1, we introduced her as a character. I was like, cool, this is her storyline. They followed through on that. I had my ideas for season 2. Took a little while to get that started up. Then we got to it, like, that's great. That was what I wanted to see. Going to season 3, I was adamantly a little bit scared on where they were going with her because it just didn't feel like anything substantial. And that's the one problem when you have with an ensemble team show or just anything of that nature. There's always going to be that one character that it doesn't feel like they're getting the development that they deserve. And that's the only issue when you have so many characters, is like there's only so much you can do, and like depending on your episode order and depending on how you want to pace out your story and who you want to focus on, it becomes a little bit, difficult to balance that. And so for me, like, it just well, first of all, eventually Yolanda Sordell, I think was the next natural step for her as a character. And I definitely felt for it. Again, it's not just like, the Latinx, representation over here, but it's just also like, I can get what she's coming from. Like, I know the struggles that she's going for, or like the general concept of the struggle. And that's something that, I was able to relate to. And, the whole theme of the season also didn't help anything out with her case. So that was like, just for me, like that was like where I wanted like to see her go next. And I was really, once again, satisfied for where they ended her up. But to kind of like skip a little bit ahead, like skip when I talked about like, there are always characters that do not get their proper, like, division of time. For me, it's a bit of Mike and Jakeem this season, where like they end the season 2 setting up, like, we're going to start our own sector, our own team, our own like Young Justice Society or stuff like that, which I'm like, there's only 2 of y'all, but okay, sure, be the dynamic duo or something. I felt like there was the more promise there because, like, you set up the Thunderbolt, you set up Mike having much more of a bigger role, and then it's sadly to say, like, I'm not trying to say like they don't get anything, they get something, but I feel like you could have told more, that there was obviously more planned, there was more done. And again, it's not me saying like they don't do anything this season. They definitely have a purpose. They definitely have a reason. It's just mostly for me, I was just noticing, okay, what are you trying to tell with these characters? And I see what you're going through. It just didn't land 100% where it needs to be for me. And again, I'm not trying to take away to what they did achieve or they did accomplish. It just felt like there could have been more to do. And that's just my opinion on the matter. And that's all I'm going to leave it as, because in fact, their part of the story doesn't really start till later on. So it's kind of really difficult to say. But if you have watched the season, you kind of understand what I'm trying to imply for here. Rick kind of takes a little bit of a backseat this season a little bit. I feel like the last 2 seasons were like really harkening on like, him being like the only real legacy member of the team, and also with his relationship with Solomon Grundy that they started up last season. And all that sort. Like, it definitely felt like they had a mindset for him. And this is one of the only issues I have where it's like, it's great when you have a long running story planned out, but the problem is when you don't get to tell it, you kind of have to cut short a little bit. And it's like, okay, you can naturally assume the conclusion, but it doesn't have the finite, conclusion you were deserving for. And they definitely had I think they had some great stuff lined out for him. And it was one of those, like, similar to Yolanda, where it's like, there are certain moments where, like, I'm not liking what you're pushing. I'm not liking what you're heading. But unlike Yolanda, like, there were definitely, like, shades of, like, this is your story. But it felt like there wasn't enough time to tell it in this season. And I could definitely assume they were trying to save that for next season, or just to tell more of that next time, but it just didn't happen. So it's all about the whole speculation thing, and it didn't have much of the grip I was looking for. For Beth, however, Beth got a lot this season, because other than Courtney, her parents actually figured out that, was told, like, yeah, I'm a superhero. Well, I am portraying a superhero. So just so you know, for, safety reasons, but they get all sort of like involved with it because, like, this is like kind of like a dream project for them. Like, our daughter can be a big superhero. And honestly, it's kind of one of those, like, the cringy moments where, like, I'm very, like, I know some people are like, they laugh on cringe, or it's like, oh, it's hilarious when, like, a character feels very off about, like, certain characters or certain other things. That you can have that moments like, what am I doing? And then but for me, I don't react to it. Like, I just turn away. Like, I can't deal with this right now. I really can't. And for that reason alone, like I was like cringy towards the parts with the parents. But there was a deeper story to tell with that, and I actually did understand the emotional core of it, and I was very thankful by the end of it. It's like, okay, that's how you want to like really like turn it around, or like lesson learned type thing. That was a lesson like truly earned, and I would like to give specifics, but like I really can't. But the whole the parent storyline with Beth this season definitely was like, it was funny. It was cringe, but the end result was great. It was great to see. But speaking of another cringe, because Sportsmaster and Artemis, not Artemis, the Croc families in this season, I'm like, y'all are just, I need to turn away. Like, how do you make me become attached to you? Like, for me, I thought Bev's parents were like cringe, but like they were manageable. The Crocs for me were complete cringe. I'm like, but not in a bad way. It's like, they're just trying to reform to society. They're trying to like be good for the sake of like, okay, we lost our daughter once, we were taken away from her. Now we're back, but we need like, to stay. We need to make good with our fellow, neighbors who used to be our enemies. And it's just like the try hard thing. Like I never really thought it to be like a useful thing in any sort of media. But by the end of it, it's like you wonder, like, because you get attached to them in that weird way. It's like by the end of the season, it's like, I really like them. I'm like, what? It's like that's like such the weirdest thing to do. And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, I can't believe they did it. They actually made me like these characters, but in a very different way that I wasn't expecting. It was a subconscious thing. And it's like they actually achieved that. I'm like, that's cool. That's really, really cool. Pat tried to grow a beard this season. Because why not? I guess he was like, we had enough of clean shaven Pat. We need to get him on Sylvester's level. So let's get him a beer. Let's get him all like a little gruffed up. But he's still the same Pat we love. He's still the one like giving like, the very unique wisdom where he understands the conflict of everything going on. But he's always being like the thing that just, it's not quite the way you were expecting. And definitely with Sylvester coming back, it definitely created like a lot of conflict because like, it's not just all roses of like, oh, hey, you're my best friend and I'm back. But it's like you missed so much and then you get filled in on like what you missed. And you're like, oh, no, I don't agree with you on this. Because like, yeah, even friends disagree with each other. And I said that at the end of season 2 where like they tease them like there is an issue, there is a problem, and we're going to fix it. And then by the time we get to it, it's like, okay, now you're starting to get a little bit of like, oh wait, I don't agree with you on this, or this is something that I don't really necessarily side with you on. And that was the thing that I really liked with the season between them. And, I'm not giving away how it all ended up, but like, definitely it is like, okay, you're still paying a little bit of like, respect to that, in a weird, like, even though we don't get to see much of the past this season, you still understand that. In its own context. I think the other thing, the other character is Barbara. Barbara's mostly involved with the Crocs this season, in which I'm like, I again, it was all part of the reason why for me, like, not to get a little bit light here, is like Barbara's reaction and overall like viewment of the Crocs and everything, especially with Tigress. It felt like me. It felt like us as viewers of like, this is not something we're used to. This is not something we're comfortable with. But eventually, you get attached and you get a little happy. And like after a while, like you really feel for it. It's like it's not something you were expecting. And it's like that's kind of how Barbara was like the viewers this season in a way. And that was pretty funny to see. Other than that, like I really can't get too much in specific. Like Cindy this season also like I think she was the underrated MVP. Like she just went through so much. She went through so much this season. And like at the end of it, it's like you kind of get that, like, like an earned sympathy where like, yeah, she was a bad person in the past. You don't feel genuine with her change at the start, but you go for the journey. It's like you kind of feel for her, like, okay, no one really deserves anything bad to happen to them. And that's kind of what I saw with that this season. But other than that, I think they just delivered most of the characters on a pretty great front. Visually, like I spoke of this earlier, like, it's the CW budgeting. Like they cut out so many they really spread it out. They really like made it all work when it can. But the CG is still on par with the previous seasons. Maybe a little bit less because of just everything going on with like, no Stripe, barely any powers, but it's like, it all makes sense. Like, the moments we did get, it all worked out better for me, in my opinion. Even though, yeah, season 1 still has the best visuals of the 3. This season really does, like, it does its best to, like, actually rival that and everything else. But for me, like, to kind of wrap it all up, yes, I think for me, Stargirl season 3 is the best of the 3. Just paying off everything that the last 3 seasons have introduced and everything, all the storylines and everything. It definitely left everything closed in a very loose manner. Like, we can always reopen the story in the future should the lords at New DC allow us to. But right now, it is a very serviceable conclusion. It definitely leaves you with the speculation of like, what does your imagination take certain things next, and where do we go with in that for that direction. So for me, I'm gonna give this up. I'm recommending this entire season. Like, 2 thumbs up. I highly recommend it. It definitely is a worthy season of Stargirl. It is worthy of being the final season. RIP. Not supposed to be, but just how everything's going with the CW and DC and Warner Brothers and even HBO Max. It's like, it's just part of like the changing tides, and it's just, for me, it's unfortunate that they'll never get to tell the full story of the show, but at least this season was able to like wrap everything up and leave you satisfied with like, okay, that was the ending, and now we can move on. And that for me was like the best part of it. But yeah, you can catch all the episodes of the 3rd season of DC Stargirl right now for free on the CW.com. Go check it out. I'm 100% certain it will be going to HBO Max at some eventual point, so you can go check it out there. But right now, you can catch all the episodes for free on the CW.com, so go check it out. It'll probably be on DVD at some point in the next year. I haven't bought season 2 yet, so I really should get on the money with that. But if you're unaware, this has been What's New from ActionX. If you want to know what we're doing also on our shows, besides Stargirl, we're doing Doom Patrol right now, so you can go check those out. We're doing the standalone episode reviews. But however, you don't care about Stargirl, if you're inclined to see more of Stargirl, go watch the 3rd season. Go watch our episode reviews that we did afterwards, and then go and see them all. It's all connected somehow in a weird way. You can also let me know how you thought of season 3, spoiler free, or even a little spoilers down below. I would love to have a conversation down below. I haven't met anyone that's really talking about the season yet. Also, another thing I forgot to mention, I don't know even know why. We had our 400 episode on What's in the Tube this year, and it was a Stargirl review. And normally it's like supposed to be like this big encapsulate, like there's supposed to be like a really sincere connection somehow to like these milestones. Like episode 100 was my favorite show of all time, How I Met Your Mother. Episode 200 was me and George talking about Gotham, which was one of the shows we talked about at our very early age of our friendship. And then episode 3 was My Hero Academia, which is for me my favorite anime of all time, one of my favorite shows of all time. So for episode 400, while it was just it felt like a standard episode review, what was funny was that actually before I filmed that episode review, I went to the premiere of Black Adam in New York City, which was where I live, and I got to meet the cast of Stargirl. Well, only just Stargirl and Wildcat, Breck Bassinger and damn, I forgot her name. Yolanda's actress, I forgot. Yvette Montreal. I got to meet them in person. They were such the nicest people, so caring, so down to earth, and I was like very, very happy with that interaction. Definitely was one of those cases where like, you can't meet your heroes and sometimes it will pay off. It definitely was. I got to take a selfie with them and everything. Again, very cool people, and again, making that episode review so much more special, making this season so much more special. I'm not trying to say it's supposed to be biased. It's like, oh, I got to meet the stars during this season, so it's going to be the best regardless. Like, no, either way, the story they were presenting was like the best of the 3 in my opinion, and it just left me wanting more, but we'll never get to have more in that opinion. But yeah, this was the end of our Stargirl reviews for now. Because hopefully in the future, in 2023, what my initial plans are, and yeah, the official review is over, so you can go click off right now. I already recommended it. Go check it out. But for me in 2023 for Stargirl, it's not going away because Stargirl will be appearing on Titans at some uncertain point in the second half of their season 4. So we will review that episode and see where does it fit in the entire Stargirl story. It will also be like the proper send up to Brett Bassinger playing Stargirl, playing the character one more time. I'm gonna assume we don't really know how that's entirely gonna pitch us. I'm not even gonna speculate there. So we will review that episode and see where that all fits in like the timeline. And also, by the way, down the road is that we've been doing these definitive reviews on the channel where like after a few years we come back and we talk about an old season. This time with the spoiler, filled editions and everything. So we will do that at some point for Stargirl. I don't know what the plan is for that because there's a lot of things to plan out for the new year that I haven't really started taking a look at. But rest assured, we will return to the world of Stargirl in a different way, hopefully starting next year. So the magic will never die. We'll still have a chance to revisit these characters one more time in a different fashion. But that's in the future. But for now, this is the end of the road. But again, if you have been watching me since the beginning, since the first episode review, thank you so much for watching. If you're just joining us now, welcome. Hopefully you'll catch up on all the other content that we produce for Stargirl that you've also missed. That would be greatly appreciated. It definitely does help us out a lot. But again, thank you so much. It's been a great journey. It's been a fun ride. Feels bittersweet to say goodbye. But hopefully we'll get to say hello at some point in the future. Or maybe not. Who knows? But again, thank you so much. This has been What's This View from ActionX. Please subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring that bell for notification when our next review is live. Please also like, favorite, share if you want to. Follow us on social media. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for all you Stargirls out there. Thank you for the support. I'm going to miss you all. Maybe I'll see you down the road somewhere, somehow. But until then, to whatever the future has in store for you, stay safe out there in this world. Be good to each other as always. And please, peace out.